It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. You know, I have this saying that says old maps don't account for new changes. So be careful when navigating by them. Boy, isn't it nice, these digital maps we got? You got to love them. I mean, every once in a while they tell you to take a left to the middle of a bridge, but for the most part, they're up to date, they're accurate. They're easy to use. They're accounting for all that's happened since the last time you looked at the map. And when I look at my friends in the print sector that are transitioning into IT services and IT security services, I'm horrified a little bit because I believe they're using maps that were put together in 2010. And these 2010 maps, they haven't accounted for the changes. These 2010 maps, they're not putting into account that these print dealers transitioning into IT services and IT security services, well, they didn't even exist as a business in 2010 for the most part. And I want to explain this a little bit more because there is a root to the problem of the industry's lack of success, if you will, in this transition, because it's been going on for over a decade. I've talked about this before a little bit. I want to share some more insights on it because in the year 2023, we've got to solve this problem. I believe we can solve this problem, but only if we're willing to maybe consider getting some new maps. So ladies and gentlemen, let's just jump on the board and I want to share my thoughts with you. This chart came out of Service Leadership's last report, and I've had Peter on the show before, and this chart is actually sharing with you the revenue of IT services companies and the percentage of the whole in those revenue categories. Let me just jump down here. About 82% of IT service providers are under 10 million in revenue, while about 69% are under 5 million. 69% of all the IT service providers that give Service Leadership data are under $5 million in revenue. Ladies and gentlemen, 29% of them are under $1 million. 29% of them are under $1 million. When I think about those dealers that are 10 and 15 and 25 and $100 million trying to get into IT services, are you following the maps that were put together for $1 million to $5 million companies? Because if you are, I think when you end up at the destination, you're not going to be happy. Do you really want to build a $5 million IT services company? Is that your goal? You want to be like 69% of these other folks? Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to think about this. It's pretty safe to say that if 69% of all the IT service providers are under $5 million, that the consultants that are in the IT services space, well, 70% of their customers probably do less than $5 million in business. And if that's the case, then you need to start thinking about what that means for you. Over the last few years, I've been adamant about dealers going upstream. You have to go after better accounts. You have to have a floor that you're willing to accept for services revenue. I believe that floor should be 10 grand a month. If you accept someone at 5 grand a month, that's only because you know they're going to grow into the 10 grand a month based on the vertical they're in and your experience in that vertical. But ladies and gentlemen, if most of the IT service providers in the world are doing less than $5 million in business, all you got to do is start figuring out how many customers do they have. What's their average revenue per customer? What's the average services revenue? What's the average pass-through on software as a service at low margins? What's the real services revenue? What's the assessments revenue? What's the security services revenue? What's the consultation revenue? You see, for way too long, our industry has allowed the IT services community to talk to them like they talk to the $1 million and the $5 million IT service providers. And I've been telling you for about the last 3 years that $5 million, $3 million IT service providers with average contracts of $1,500 to $3,000 per month in services are going to get wiped off the map very soon, and I still strongly believe that. We can see what's going on with Google and 365 and Microsoft and Apple and Salesforce and AT&T and all these players that want to come into the marketplace and gobble up the commodity of IT, those low-hanging customers at $1,500 to $3,000 a month. It's coming, folks. And when I look at my friends at a $20 million copier dealership or a $100 million copier dealership, I'm convinced they don't want to build a lifestyle IT services company with revenues of $5 million and average customer sizes of 1,000 to 3,000. Why in the hell would they want to do that? They're already leaving a commodity business. That was the reason for the transition or the diversification, was to leave the commodity business of print, which has fallen off a cliff. And now that we've had this commodity, we scaled the commodity of print, if you will. Our industry scaled the commodity of print. And now, well, guess what? There's new people coming in after that business. Amazon's doing a great job taking away our customers every single day. I put this slide together, and this, stick with me on this concept and really start thinking about this. Back in 2010, if I went to an IT services convention, I was hearing this. Ladies and gentlemen, you can't have a break-fix organization. You got to get reoccurring revenue. The break-fix model's dying. You know, the IT services industry's had their procrastinators, just like our industry. Well, we were trying to convince, the print sector, you got to get into managed print services, and that was like 20 years ago, and they still ignored it. The IT services people were telling their peers that they have to get into reoccurring revenue. The break-fix model is going to go away. We all know that if you're a break-fix IT services company today, you're not a real serious player in the space. You're probably a very small lifestyle business working out of your garage still, right? Okay, we get it. But folks, you can be a break-fix business model with reoccurring revenue. Use your imagination. When I think about a break-fix or broken-replace business model, my machines are broken, here's a bid, sell me some more. Come over, and how much will you charge me to do this? And even if they're collecting reoccurring revenue on some SaaS projects or whatever it is, they might still have this break-fix mentality. And that mentality is based on a help me. It's based on the customer saying, help me. But they stop right after me. They just say, help me. And then being the good service provider you are, you run out there and you help them. And you solve the problem. And the new model is help protect me. We want the customer that says, help protect me. Because when the customer says, help protect me, well, guess what? They only want you to protect them against a threat. We would all have to admit that cybersecurity and the threats all around it are intensive, and they're never going away anytime soon. It's a long-term commitment. Help protect me. When your clients are saying, help protect me, guess what? Those are the clients that you're having conversations and you're assessing the client. That's the reality. Those IT service providers and security service providers that have moved upstream, that are going after the right customer with the right persona, they're interviewing the customer to see if they qualify to be the customer of the MSP. It's the total opposite of the help me break fix model, broke repair model. When you meet with those customers, they're assessing you as the seller. They're assessing you as the seller. Most of that assessment is how cheap can you be? Can you save us money? I think our industry, we want to be having conversations where we're assessing clients whether or not they can fit in the bus with us. Ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly why I'm not a big fan of master service providers, and I've talked about this before. Master service providers, they build these platforms that allow MSPs to go out and resell those services, and they build these platforms, and what they end up with is a commodity platform. Most of the MSPs that are on that platform are doing what? Less than $5 million a year in revenue. 29% of all IT players are doing what? Less than $1 million in revenue. Those contracts that those MSPs have, what are they? $1,500 a month, $3,000 a month? There's probably so much dysfunction in that. And then if you're one of those MSPs that's using this master service provider and you're after perfection, you want to have conversations assessing clients, do you really want to put that client in dysfunction when you're seeking perfection? You guys need to think about this. And think about it hard. I'm talking about this for a while now. The master service provider programs, I truly believe, in 2010 they were starting to get outdated. And today, I believe they're completely outdated. They have a place, but that place, Well, that place is for IT service providers that wanted to deliver a commodity into the marketplace, and I don't think any of my friends want to deliver a commodity in the marketplace. And folks, all you got to do is look at the real world around you. The most successful dealers that have transitioned into IT services don't use master service providers. They just don't use them. Why is that? I know the reasons that, me and Milton stopped using them when we made that decision when I was with him years ago. But at the end of the day, everybody has the reason. And I believe the main reason, the core reason that MSPs leave a master service provider is because they're having more conversations assessing clients than they are having conversations where clients are assessing them. That's when this switch is made. Something to think about. But folks, if we can't figure out how to monetize our intellect in the marketplace, we're going to lose. I've been screaming for a long time about having fee-based assessments. Stop giving stuff away. Ladies and gentlemen, in the very near future, I'm going to switch the conversations from assessments to advisory services. That's all I want to say about that today, but stay tuned. It's already changing. And we need to be able to understand why it's important for us to sell assessments. If I was one of those friends of mine that was selling, supplying and servicing print equipment, and I was going into IT services, and I had a consultant that was helping me do that, and that consultant told me, don't sell assessments, don't worry about selling assessments, I would fire the consultant. Because you should know logically that you're supposed to sell your services. If the services are worthless, then don't sell them. If the consultants allow you to talk them out of it, because a lot of them will do that. Well, you told us to sell the assessments, but we're having struggles with that. Don't worry. Well, give them a discount. We'll come up with all kinds of reasons. When the consultants tell you that, don't worry about having a floor contract. You can do really well with $3,000 a month service contracts. That'll work out fine for you. Here's the reality. Of course it'll work out fine for you. But you'll have built a commodity business that someone will come and take away from you. You'll have built a commodity business that you can't make any money on. You'll have built a commodity business that you don't have any aptitude or ability to sell upstream services. You'll be left behind. You'll be part of the 69% that do less than $5 million a year in business. And then you'll say to yourself, what the hell did I do? I replaced this big, beautiful, wonderful copier business I had with a lifestyle IT services business that doesn't make any money, and now it's a big commodity, the same thing I left from print. You'll be really upset about it. And folks, I got to tell you something. If you don't figure out how to sell your intellect, you're going to be in trouble. I talked to my buddy Milton the other day, and he finished his numbers for the year. I said, Milton, what was the percentage of hardware, total revenue? 7%, he says. 7%. Last year it was 14%. It went from 14% of his revenue to 7% of his revenue in 1 year. People aren't buying hardware anymore. But Milton grew his business over 20% in services, selling his intellect. Ladies and gentlemen, please don't build a commodity IT services business. It would be a disaster. And so I want you all to think about this. Are we building a value-added business that we can scale, or are we scaling a commodity? Because if you're going to scale something, you got to scale the value. I don't know how many times I tell you all this, but when I talk about Milton's business, what's he got? 80 customers, doing $13+ million a year in business with 80 accounts, so you can do the math on his average customer size. But when you start thinking about that, folks, if you're a $50, $80, $100 million copier dealer, even if you're a $10 million copier dealer, and you play the right game, you could have maybe 80 customers in all your different markets. And you could have a pretty substantial IT services company. But when you listen to these consultants and they tell you, your myth is so big, you're going to do so wonderful because you have all these great salespeople and you understand leasing, you're positioned perfectly to knock it out of the park. Guess what's going to happen? Well, if you're kind of good, you might actually accomplish that, but you just scaled a commodity in IT. Congratulations. And now all the other players are going to come and just take away your customers because you built no value in it. Do it the right way, please. Because, folks, the bottom line is this. The industry has to transition. 2023 is a pivotal year for our industry. I really believe this. We have to do things different. And if we do things different, we ask different conversations, we make those that are helping us and we're paying them to help us, we make them validate that. When you're at meetings and you listen to the speaker talk about how they have IT service providers that get ridiculous EBITDAs, question it. Because that's silly, right? When you hear these vendors talking about how there's people in the room knocking it out of the park with their services, validate it. I think it's funny. This is a true story. One time I was at a meeting, someone on stage talking about how we got people in this room that are knocking it out of the park with IT. They actually mentioned one of the companies, and that company told me, I wish we were. It's hadn't been going too well. He's a little more optimistic. But see, because our industry, we just want to tell people what they think they want to hear. We don't care if they end up scaling commodity, as long as they pay us. But I assure you, when you're building an IT services company in the year 2023 to get you to 2030, I think you want to scale value a lot more than you want to scale a commodity. And everybody watching me knows this. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo, and I'll see you all tomorrow.